to our final destination.
Will it be warm then?
What's that? What'd you say?
It's only going to get colder.
Will it be warmer?
It will be mild.
And the night it's going to be chilly.
Are you saying you wish we camped here last night?
Oh, we should have camped here.
Why didn't we camp up in, outside of Twin Falls? Yeah, a little cold this time of year. Cold desert. We've been watching sagebrush, nice little galls on sagebrush, and so Artemisia tridentata, three-pronged at the end. You know this one well now. So this is the Angiosperm Phylogeny Group's kind of giant phylogeny poster, the same one that we posted about. And we've circled on here families we're probably going to see along the route. And what you'll notice is that there's a number of, so we've got our monocots and our dicots split out. And we've got kind of core dicots down here and monocots. We're probably not going to see any of our monocots until we're down south, because a lot of these monocots are cryptophytes. They have a bowl, they're below the soil, and they'll only come up in the summertime. A lot of monocots here in the summertime. A lot of Mariposa lilies in the sagebrush habitat. But this time of year, too cold, obviously, for them, and they're not going to come up. But by the end of the day, we should start seeing some members of Agavaceae, Asparagaceae, Liliaceae, which are monocots, of course, by the time we're in Valley of Fire. So all of our yuccas and agaves. In fact, we may even see some Joshua trees on the road. Yep. Okay, but cold desert, we're down in the dicot zone. Dicots do really well in cold environments, especially because they can do secondary plant growth. They can get woody. We can have perennial structures above ground that are woody and hardy, like our sagebrush. And sagebrush is way down in the Asteraceae. So in order to find that, we go down to the Asterids here, which is superorder, and then we're going to go into, where's our Asteraceae at?
Under aquifolium.
Asterales.
Here we go. Okay, so in the Asterales actually order Asteraceae. So that's our sagebrush, sunflower family, right? Similarly, this is our rabbit brush, which is also sagebrush family, or is also sunflower family. So also Asteraceae, little compound flowers. What you're seeing there are the dead leftovers of the previous year's bloom. They have really nice yellow blooms, kind of like this guy right here, but they're tiny. And of course, each of these is a cluster of flowers, just like, on the things we saw in lab. We also had it tumbled away. Salsola is in the Chenopodiaceae. So not too far away, we just saw it right here. So in the Caryophyllales, which is where we're going to find a lot of our flowering plants.
Can you repeat that name again?
Salsola tragus, I think, and Chenopodiaceae, Cheno, and it's right here.
Dylan, what other plants are in that family?
I just pointed to it. So if you want to come up and look at the poster, you can just write down the spelling. Chenopods are like, I think, they tend to be grains that are grown. I'm trying to think of a grain that we eat that's a chenopode. Is buckwheat.
Is tumbleweed a monocots?
No, buckwheat's different. That's in its own family. No, not at all. Down in the dicots for sure.
Okay,
Yeah, but the chenopodes we generally associate with old world grains. Things that we grow. And of course, that it's an old world plant. So there's that. We're also right in the range when you did your GIS lab looking at those those BLM plots. They're out here, all around you, right? We're driving, we probably drove past 30 of them, on the way here. So that's kind of the habitat you're in. Let's see. Yesterday, did we see any? We didn't see much Persia tridentata. There was a lot of yellow brush. Occasionally we'll see some stuff in the Rosaceae that will be shrubs. These shrubs along the. I don't know.
Are they this like?
You have to point it out again, or yeah, at another stop. The other thing you'll start noticing here as we get into these draws, these mountains are really refugia for cold climate species. You'll find cottonwoods in the little draw. You'll find all sorts of climate change refuge plants growing in these isolated mountains. And you'll notice that this pattern with our conifers, of course, which you're finding up on slope. But occasionally you'll see these little draws where you're seeing the junipers and pines come out, and they're just taking advantage of the little colder air in those draws that keeps moisture around longer.
We've been seeing the plant for a while now, ever since we've kind of gotten to the more xeric part of Oregon. It tends to be in riparian areas, and it seems like the new growth is red. And right now they're just
Or yellow.
What is that?
Yeah, a lot of the yellow will be willows. There'll be, as we get south, there'll be coyote willow.
like a bush, and it grows like a bush.
Yeah, shrub willow. But there are a number of species, and they hybridize like crazy. I meant to get out a map we have of hybrid zones for North America. And when you combine willows, oaks, cottonwoods, some pine hybrids, subspecies hybrids of sagebrush, virtually the entire West is a hybrid zone. It's really hard. But some species exemplify that more than others. Some taxa exemplify that more than others, and willows really do that around here. But there are a number of shrubby willow species, and then there was some dogwood that we were seeing that was bright red in the gorge.
Redosier dogwood?
Maybe, yeah.
What about the purplish shrubs that were on the right side as we were coming in?
I don't know. Yeah. Have to see them. No Ocotillo yet. So we're not in the realm. We haven't hit yucca. We haven't hit agave. We haven't hit Ocotillo. All of those, it just depends on how fast we get going down the road, but all of those will be at the end of the day. The only other thing to say here is that the monocots that we are seeing is a whole bunch of stuff in the Poaceae, right? So, of course, grasses are up in that monocot group too, and so and there are a number of representatives of those, though they may have blown away already. Yeah, there we go. This is the big story, though, for this. If there's one, there's some neat work that's happening, like you saw the wildlife crossing for antelope and deer back behind us, and there's some neat work that's being done there. There's some changes, though, that are happening in this habitat. I think that the sagebrush habitat was really neglected as far as management went for a long time. And one of the things that has happened with widespread grazing and disturbance in these zones is the spread of cheatgrass, which I'm not holding here. There's a lot of cheatgrass spread throughout here. We've seen it at little stops, and you'll find a ton of it out under these power poles. Cheatgrass is an annual, grows early in the spring and then dies. It carries fire really well. These are not fire-adapted habitats, and so fire moving through the sagebrush is actually pretty destructive to the habitat, which means it's destructive for things that are dependent on that habitat, like sagebrush grouse and other animals that are dependent on it. There's also been a fair amount of chaining of sagebrush, and so often you'll see these areas where it's sagebrush steppe, and then all of a sudden you're like, why do I suddenly see a square of what looks like grassland, or I see large swaths of grassland? It's common practice to, between two tractors, you hook up a chain, drive them forward, and you rip out everything in between the chain that is brushy, and then you leave habitat for grass. There's kind of a change in there's a cycle that develops when the cheatgrass comes in, because the cheatgrass will come into those chained areas or heavily grazed areas, carries fire, which further degrades the sagebrush habitat, which allows for more annual grass to colonize, which carries more fire, which leads to it, so there's kind of a downward spiral.
What's kind of the restoration time if, we have a stand replacing fire of sagebrush?
It depends on the habitat, right? And it depends on the zone. I mean, like you've read, sagebrush, we're talking about a big taxon that covers a lot of territory and has a lot of different habitat preferences among subspecies. So it depends on how fast growing they are. It could be from, it could take you, 5 to 10 years in a really, fast zone. It could be, 20 to 50 years in a really cold zone to get it really back. So it's not uncommon that we could have old growth sagebrush out here that's 50 to 100 years old.
Nobody ever plucks the low-hanging fruit. We all start.